Yeah, welcome, Clayton.
Thank you.
Say a little bit about yourself. It's Clayton Simon. That's your name. Say how old you are and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm middle of life now, over 40 a little bit here. So it's kind of wild how fast life goes. But yeah, I'm originally from the United States,
mm,
born and raised in Minnesota. Lived around different parts of the United States. After that, toured as a musician.
mm.
Um, moved to Norway about 13 years ago, and
You're married.
married and have 4 kids and another one on the way. So
Yeah.
it's big family.
Welcome to come to my place with 5 kids.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, we took the first Great Commission very serious. Be fruitful,
And multiply
multiply,
100%.
subdue the earth. That's where we're at right now. Um, you have experienced a lot of things with God, and I just have to say again, said it last time we talked, that I'm really encouraged with, like, for me listening to you, it's just like it just builds faith.
Mhm.
Like, I've never had those experiences that you had. I've never really struggled believing that other people have them. Like, I remember reading The Final Quest with Rick Joyner, and it's like I never had like any inkling that this was not true, or but I've never experienced that myself to the same level. Like, for me, like I had a great conversation with my daughter actually on the way down here. She's going to a DTS now, and she was like saying like she struggles um, with not being sure even if God really exists, and she's on a DTS now, and so and and what I realized is that, and why we had such a great conversation, was that she has kind of a picture of what it means to be fully convinced that God exists, and she had a picture of that, and she didn't feel like she fit in that picture. But I told her, like, well, you've experienced the presence of God, and she said yes, and you had prophetic words given over your life. She said yes, and so in those places when she has had those experiences, she's totally like, yeah, I've experienced God, but it's like coming back. Well, it was not what I expected. It was not within this box, and for me, like prophecy, for example, has been like, I've never, like, you had shared some prophecies, and it's like it feels like you're, and I heard other prophecies like it's an open vision or dreams that are extremely clear, and it's like almost like Daniel, like in the like the writing on the wall,
Mhm.
is like it's so clear that it's impossible to kind of question it. But for me, it has always been a deep, or a voice that I can always talk myself into believing that that's just me.
Mhm.
I've never had something that is so outside of myself that, well, that was for sure God, because I didn't have any influence on it. For me, it's like this deep, this still small voice, um, that, and it's first when I take the step and believe that it could be God that I realize that it was God.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of people are at my place, and you are more unique in like the. But I also know quite a few people that are at, that has very clear prophetic revelation or something like that.
Mhm.
So how? Yeah. Why don't you just share some of the experiences that you had and just feel like.
Yeah. No. I think most of I could say most first of all, thank you, just for that. But then, as far as God speaking on certain levels, I would say the majority of the time, God does speak in that small, still leading of that
Mm.
voice, and it takes faith no matter what, whether
Yeah.
you've had a strong experience that comes from an outside experience in a sense, or it's you having the impression in your heart. Both take faith
Yeah.
either way,
Yeah.
and so I think it's sometimes people get easy, I think, just comparing themselves. They start comparing themselves. And I think, no, we don't want to compare ourselves. Like
No.
each one of us is on our own, has our own unique relationship with the Lord. And sometimes, experiences happen that are very, very strong. Sometimes they don't. Either way, it's faith.
Yeah.
Either way, it's faith. But I would say, to your point, I have had a lot of unique experiences with the Lord since the time that I was young. But to me, they're kind of like the Bible says, don't give your pearls before the swine, in a sense, like the people that aren't going to respect them enough to know that they're pearls, the pigs don't care about that. And I'm not calling anybody a pig. That's up for God to decide. But what I mean is some people aren't going to value those things in the same way.
No.
And so for me, I keep them close, but they are very central to my life. I may not talk about them all the time, and I there's a time and a place for that. But they're precious to me. They have led my life, and I have had a lot of fruit in the sense of a lot of good things that have come from it because I have followed through and believed on, whether it was a powerful, clear dream, or it was a trance, or it was, from time to time, I've even had experiences with angels, things like that. Is that all the time? No, it's not all the time. Is it every day? Definitely not every day. But the more that I am in God's presence, the more that I am pursuing him in what that looks like and how I know in my own convictions to follow him, the more that I find that I become open and sensitive for that kind of thing to happen more regularly.
Well, one thing that like to the viewers that come and listen to this, and I think that a lot of young men will come and listen to this. And one thing that I realized when I was young is that as I said, I always had faith that God spoke very clearly to people. And for me, it was always easier to believe that God in you than to believe God in me. And but when I realized that, like, for example, it says like, my sheep hear my voice, and it says like, you may all prophesy. And when I really for me, it was almost like a conscious decision that I want to believe this. I want to believe that the scripture says that God speaks to his children and we may all prophesy. So it was kind of a conscious decision. Well, I'm going to believe that. And what I realized afterwards is that God has been speaking to me the whole time. I just didn't recognize his voice. And so I just want to encourage the people like that are maybe listening that don't feel like God speaks to them, that God does speak, but it's up to us to actually recognize the voice. And he speaks to us in different ways. And
I will also add that one misconception, especially people that are starting out, is that when they hear someone say, oh, we can hear God's voice, people automatically think, well, it's going to come in a way like us talking, or in a way that, but that's not always true.
No,
it does happen that way sometimes, but generally, if he is speaking, it's going to be in the form of some sort of a riddle.
Yeah.
And if you think about when Jesus was with his disciples, he told stories, and they were called parables all the time.
Yeah.
He's never stopped talking like that.
No.
And so,
Isn't that irritating sometimes?
Yeah, sometimes it is. But it's even to his disciples. Why is it, finally you're telling us something plain, we haven't you understood all this time? And so, but he's always been talking like that. Yeah. He still talks like that today. Yeah. And it is part of the process of getting to know him is to dig down and what is the parable? What is the dream? What does it symbolize? And have humility when we approach that we could misunderstand. His disciples misunderstood, didn't understand everything he said. Why wouldn't we be any different? And so I just want to encourage people. It's not always in a voice that said this. Sometimes it is just a simple dream, and there's a deep meaning for it if we would actually take the time to understand what it could be for us.
Well,
Yeah.
it reminds me of two things. One is like it says in Proverbs, I think it says like, it's a glory of God to conceal a matter and a glory of kings to search it out. We are kings, like we're the kingly priesthood, Hebrews. Uh, the other thing is like what you said, like don't throw your pearls for swine. Like it is. I think it's only the ones that um, actually are
Mm.
uh, valuing
Mm.
the sees the value of the pearl that actually is going to find it. The pigs, as you was talking about, they're not even going to notice that it was pearls there in the first place.
Mm.
They're just going to trample them.
Mhm.
And I see that for me. One fun story. This is a fun story.
Yeah.
Um, we had like this youth group, the live, and I remember we had it was a night, and I was praying for people, and I've noticed that like a lot of time when I pray for people, you see that it's like I'm really like sometimes I really get very clear revelation. So I was praying for this girl, and I don't remember what I was praying for, but I got it this picture or this thoughts or not clear, but it was like I kind of get very general thing, and then it's like I'm asking the person, so I feel this. Does that fit? Does that make
Mm.
sense? And she said, yeah. And then I got more kind of filled with more faith. So I was like, okay, and this. So it was more than just one thing. So, and this, does that? Do you recognize that? And she said, yeah. And I was like full of faith, and then afterwards is like I realized what I gotten was like totally from God, and it was like it was so faith building for me and for that
Mm.
girl that I prayed for.
Mhm.
2 minutes after,
Mm.
I was praying for another person, and instead of, and I got the same thing, like the same kind of feeling or thoughts and stuff like that. So, but in this instant, I was like, I feel like God says this, and this. Does that fit? And she's like, nope. So I was like, so the so it was so hard because 2 minutes before I've been very humble. It's like, does this fit? Does this fit? Does this fit? And it was like a God given
Yeah.
revelation.
Yeah.
And 2 minutes after, I was like, I believe that God says this because it was hard to differ the difference between the first and the second experience, and it was not from God at all. It was just
No.
my own flesh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I learned so much from that experience. And another story that
Yeah. Mm.
I was in India and I had been teaching there, and at the end of the meeting, like the leaders there asked, "Do you want to come and pray for people?" And there came up a guy, and I was so tired and I didn't want to pray at all. And then I got this picture or a vision that this guy had done something sexually towards someone else that was really really hurtful for both him and for the other person. And okay, I'm not sure. Is
Mm.
this me? And it's like I didn't want to come like, oh God, by the way, you have done this and this and this. Like if you're screwed up, then you're really bad. So, but I came to him and said like, I feel like you struggle with shame. And does that, and for me it wasn't that I got a revelation of that he struggled with shame. I'd seen kind of this understanding that he had done something sexually towards another person, but for me in my mind that would naturally cause shame. So I was like, so I asked him, do you struggle with shame? And he said, yeah. And then, and it's about sexual or the sexual area. And he said, yes. And it's something you done towards someone else, not something that was done towards you. And he said, yes. And then okay, that was from God. And then I just prayed for him and released him, and just poured out God's love over him. And he came to me afterwards, because the day after we came back to Norway, and he said like he had not been in church for many many years because he was so scared that someone would figure that out. And that was a small revelation that I could have easily pushed away,
Mm.
but he came to me and said like now he was going to go back to church, and he was so grateful because he felt seen by God, and he felt seen by God and not judged by God.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just thinking about how many times, because if I hadn't been obedient in that, he would have still be stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times aren't we, I am the answer to prayer for you, but the answer to prayer that you've been praying about stops because I'm not bold enough, I'm not obedient enough, and stuff like that. So just a couple of stories.
Yeah, no, that's good. But that takes practice.
Yeah,
it takes time sometimes to of being willing to step out and say something,
and being willing to be wrong,
and we be willing to be wrong, and then willing to take responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I messed up, but being honest about it rather than pretending, blah blah blah. This is how it is. This is what God says. No, that's not right. You took ownership of it. You learned from it. You were transparent. And so I think that that's really key and really important in the process of learning to hear God and stepping out is keeping, a humility close. Yeah. It reminds me, one time I was flying on a plane and many years ago, flying in planes many times, but this one particular time I was, I don't remember which city I was flying on, but that time of my life, it seemed like God would kind of give me things for the person that I would be seated near. And I'm like, oh God, I do not want to share this. I don't want to, how do you do that? How do you do that in a comfortable way? It's not, so I would usually wait. What I would actually do is I would wait to give them the word right before the plane would land, and just in case it wouldn't be too awkward, and then I could get out of there quickly. But in one particular case, and I'm not forgotten about this, I had written everything down on a piece of paper, just kind of gentle stuff, and I don't remember what all the things that I had spoken to this one lady that day. She, I don't remember all the things I said to her, but the one last thing that I do remember was I said, I see you, and now it's been a while, so I'm not remember this fresh in my mind, but it was something to the effect of I saw her in an environment that she worked around a lot of men, and I said, and I feel that God. I felt the impression I had was that she was putting up with a lot of things that weren't right in the sense of being in a very unhealthy masculine environment, and her being a woman, and some of the things that she was experiencing because of that. And I had to start to think, how do I, in a very loving way, I said, I feel that God wants you to know that you don't have to put up with the things that are being said to you at work and the way that you're treated. And I think I'd gotten a little bit more specific than that as well. She started to cry. And then she went to tell me that she was a police officer, a woman police officer, the only woman. And she experienced a lot of harassment on a sexual side all the time. And when I told her God really loves you and he's for you, he doesn't want you to have to put up with this and go through this anymore, she started crying, and she started thanking me. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I obviously was very touched that God would care enough about her to have a stranger with just through impression. And I even told her, I don't know if this is right. Forgive me if this is wrong, but I had an impression when I was just praying, and this is what the impression that came to me. And she, I don't know whatever happened with her. Did she leave her job? Did something happen? I don't know, but think how God cares about each person enough to have a stranger just encourage that he doesn't like when they stay in a toxic environment like that. He doesn't want them to put up with it. And we never know. It could have been a catalyst for something more. But that goes to show why it is beautiful and awesome when we, in a humble way, here I had this impression, I was praying, and I want to encourage you.
Wow.
of anything, and you never know what can happen from that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's like I heard Rick Joyner said at one time, like they had some crazy revelations about the place that they're at, the Morning Star, and he said actually that the the more specific the word was, um, the more he, or I don't know if you have that same experience, but he said like the more specific the word was, the bigger the battle for the word it was. So he was like, "Oh shoot! Now we got a very clear prophetic word. Oh, we're about to enter battle or spiritual warfare." And but when the word wasn't as specific, then it was like, okay, it's more like a general and it's a calmer place, because in the I don't know if it's first or second Timothy, but because remember the prophecies given to you, because by them you will fight a good fight of faith.
Mm.
So do you have the same experience? Like the more kind of the clear the word is, the more
It's exciting when the word comes in such a clear way.
yeah
Um, in some ways, sometimes it can be a bit intimidating. Um, but I have found it to be true that the stronger it is, the more that there has been resistance over things.
yeah
It doesn't come easy, but I look at that as this is an encouragement. God knows what we're going to go through, and
yeah
He's trying to give us some courage, put courage into us,
yeah
and hope. Yeah, it's not going to be an easy time for you, but here I'm going to encourage you in your walk through, like along the way. So some people don't like that, but I found it to be very true.
yeah
Um, no, what is the parable of the man that was looking for treasure and he found it in a field and he sold all to buy that? It never, in order to buy the treasure, to go after the treasure, it does cost something.
yeah
And it might be a time in between when you are able to finally purchase that field that you there's a it takes time, some of these things.
yeah
Oftentimes it says both it takes both faith and patience to inherit God's promises.
yeah
So
it's
we like the faith, we like to be filled with, yes, this is exciting, but oftentimes you can't have one without the other.
yeah.
And you need that. Sometimes the stronger the words are to encourage you to have that patience
Mm.
to keep going.
I have a few of those words in my life that has not come to pass, and it's like very clear. And one thing for me it has been hard is like when I've gotten very clear promises, and it seems like I got a like the word, like I had a very clear promise 2006, and it was supernaturally reconfirmed 2012, and then I like where we're at right then, it felt like okay, I can see us kind of growing um, into that vision right now,
Mm.
because we were running a ministry and stuff, and I could see that ministry growing into the promise that I received. And then 2013 and 14 or 2000, yeah, I think I started to share a little bit about it to my friends and stuff like that. 2013, 2014 we went bankrupt, and we laid down the ministry in 2017 or something like that. So it felt for me like the whole promise had to totally die. And so for me that was a big one of learning how to also heal my heart from bitterness towards God, because I felt like a little bitterness towards Him. Like, okay, why did He give me this promise? Because it was easier before you kind of confirm the promise, because then it was something I kind of had in the background. Well, it may happen, may not happen. And then when it was reconfirmed, it was like, wow, this is going to happen. Well, I'm so excited. And then it was like, okay, no. Now things got 10 times worse. And so but it's like to hold on to that promise even though you feel like the circumstances are taking you further away from the promise. And I know that you've experienced similar things.
Oh, yes.
So okay, so now we've talked about personal words given and encouragement, and we all may hear the word, or we may all prophesy. We are His kids, so we all can hear His voice. And then you have the next level about, like, for example, words over nations. I know you've had a few revelations about Norway and other nations as well. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Because that's a different level. And I don't believe that everyone necessarily gets those words.
No, and I would say there's the, like you said, there's the general level. If his sheep hear his voice, his kids, and if you're going to have a relationship with God, there's that invitation. You can hear him. Maybe you just don't realize it, but you can. And I would say the next level is that kind of that gift of the prophecy, and that works especially in like the body setting, of bringing edification, exhortation, comfort, like it talks about in Ephesians, building up of the body. And then I would say that the another level above that is that those that have been commissioned as a prophet, they're all prophetic.
Yeah.
They're just different levels of it. And that, so the last thing you're talking about is the words for nation usually has to do with somebody who's maybe commissioned,
An office of a prophet.
office as of a prophet. And so, I've always been thinking of myself as a prophetic person, always drawn to that, but I never called myself a prophet. I was like, well, I'm not going to call myself something if I don't know that it's true. I know in some Christian cultures, that's very natural to throw it around. And so there's no need, in my opinion, to have a title or have to have a label. It can be helpful to identify, and kind of when reflecting over scripture, where things fall. But I would say only in the last couple years have I realized, like, actually the Lord is calling me that, but that doesn't mean that I can, everything I look at, like I see everything that it's what all that means is God will show me something for a particular people group or whatever it is specifically. And I have a little bit of a responsibility then to share it, and to release it in the right way. But one thing I have found, before I share a little, is a lot of this came from me spending the type of time that I did in prayer, and having the hunger for prayer and for His presence, and that's where that prophetic flow really came out of, was spending time in prayer, spending time with prayer with friends, with people at church. And in a lot of times, I really believe that that's part of the path to people coming into that prophetic destiny, is they start by praying. I don't think you can become somebody who God would call a prophet without having a history of prayer in the foundations of it. I think that it doesn't mean that everybody that prays is a prophet, but I think that prophets come out of seasons of dedicated prayer and listening and learning to hear Him and recognize Him in that place. It's a good question about, what has God showed me. And I, either way, it's always a step of humility, in a sense. There was and I'm gonna leave the names out on purpose for this, but there was a trip that I had taken. I'll just say out in Asia, and I had found myself somehow in a room with a bunch of people who would consider themselves a part of the underground Christian. And I'm thinking, how did I even end up in this room? Like, I didn't even understand how I got there. I knew that God had brought me around there, but somehow I got invited to this place. And I thought, and a lot of them were talking about the changes that were going on in their country, and the hopelessness they had. And these were Christian leaders talking about how they were expecting some of them to be martyred for their faith, that they wouldn't be able to disciple new Christians. And they were discouraged, and it was really heavy in the room. And I'm thinking, what is going on? How did I end up here? And so I'm like, God, what are you saying? What are you saying? And I then had this vision where I was looking down above this particular nation, And now, was I up above the earth looking down? No, it was like an internal vision,
Yeah.
not with open eyes, but it was still. I've come to realize, like, when God's talking to me like this, I pay attention.
Yeah.
And so it didn't come as like, this,
No.
but it was strong, and I could feel the witness in my spirit, and I could see these angels outside the borders of this particular nation, and they were on hold, kind of on wait, waiting to given the command to come in and bring help to them on a government, like because there was the government kind of cracking down on Christians, and I thought, well, why aren't they praying in faith then?
Yeah.
Why aren't they believing in faith? They're sort of just accepting this, and I said to them, I'm really I'm really sorry, but I think that you have the say. You are leaders. And did you hear that God told you that this is the path that he has for you and your nation? And they didn't. This is just the circumstances that were going on. And I said, well, if you haven't felt that he's called you into this, it says, let the redeemed of the Lord say so. We have a say. And especially like in an ecclesia sense, here these are leaders. I think that if you haven't heard that this is what God's leading you into, rather than just accepting it, you need to have your say, that you're not standing for this. And so that's a hard thing to say to a group of people when you're an outsider and you don't. Yeah. So they ended up going into prayer, and suddenly I end up seeing this angel in the room. And it was, whenever I kind of closed my eyes, I could see the angel there. I'd open it. It was very real, but it wasn't physically there. And every time that they would be writing, or every time that they would be praying, the angel would stop writing, because they were kind of praying, oh, please this. But whenever they would start to decree the things that they knew that the Lord, the promises of God, the things that they knew that God had spoken to them for their nation, the angels started writing down on this scroll, writing down things that, and I thought I honestly didn't understand what was going on. I went kind of confused to one of the other people that I knew there, and I said, I'm seeing this. I have no idea what this has to do with anything. Yeah. And so I told him, I said, I think you need, in authority, keep just decreeing the word of the Lord. And so after a time, this is a wild thing, is that this angel turns and looks at me and says, on the day that this scroll lands in this particular city, in this particular nation, on that day there will be mass resignations in the government. And so I'm thinking, do I even dare repeat this? This sounds kind of crazy. Yeah. And but I felt like I have to say something. So I said, this is what I heard this angel say. On the day that this happens, there's going to be mass resignations in the government. Well, I didn't. I end up leaving Asia after this. I end up a year later back in the same area, and I had somebody who had been in that meeting come up to me and said, oh, thank you so much for last year. And I'm thinking, oh, what do you mean, thank you for last year? Well, the word you gave about what would happen in the government, it happened identical to what you said. Yeah. And there ended up being, and I thought, I'd never even heard about it. I hadn't been paying attention to the news. And it was because it ended up being exactly, and there are some details in there that I'm not sharing on purpose. Yeah. But the gist of it is like, when God opens your eyes or your ears, in faith, you have to come into agreement with it. And especially on the things that are going on in the world today, the temptation is to agree with every bad thing that happens. Oh, this is the end of us. This is that. It's like, that those bad things are going to happen. Shakings will happen. Those things do happen. And there's a time when God's allowing those things. But sometimes God's saying with his children, I've given you authority here. Yeah. I've given you all the power to crush serpents and scorpions. And there's a difference between an individual casting out demons and then the corporate body, especially those that are leaders like that, coming together and taking their stand in authority to bring heaven's will, in agreeing with heaven's will. That activates the angels to start to move. Then the angels, like, they start writing stuff down. And so, yeah, and I'm trying to remember. That's one story.
Yeah.
When it comes to like national stuff, things like that.
Just okay. Imagine what would have happened if you hadn't given that word, and if God didn't give that revelation, and you didn't proclaim.
And I
God's
should
will.
actually say one more thing. That governmental body that resigned, it all was in the governmental party that was enacting these laws in that nation to come down on the Christian. So in just a very short time after all of that, it was kind of like Haman being hung on the gallows in a sense, though nobody died. The very ones that were persecuting God's people ended up being the ones that were removed.
Yeah.
And but there's a time like Esther, she had to speak up. She had to do it. And sometimes we're the ones that have to speak up. If we don't say anything, that's when problems can occur.
Yeah. This is, I get so many thoughts. Like one of the things that I've been frustrated at is Christian leaders that like God has been speaking to me a lot the last couple of years about like the 10 or 12 spies that went into the promised land. Like Moses sends 12 spies in, and then he asks them specific questions. I want you to figure out if the country is fruitful. I want you to figure out if the dirt is rich or poor. I want to figure out if the people there are strong or weak. And I want to figure out if they're living in walled cities or if they're open cities. So it was like, it seems to be very practical what he asked them to figure out. And then they go in and they come back. And what I realized is that when the 10 spies come back, there's nothing that they say that it is an objective lie. They said, okay, the land is rich, it's fruitful, but the people are strong, and they were.
Yeah.
And they lived in walled cities. Their conclusion was wrong. They said like, and we are as grasshoppers in their sight, and maybe they were.
Yes.
But their conclusion was that we can't do we can't achieve the promises that God has given us. That's their conclusion.
Yeah.
And then Joshua and Caleb comes in, and they're not like they're having like I see no evil, hear no evil. I don't want to see it. They're not like that. They see the realities. Yes, the people are strong. Yes, they have walled cities, but we can do it. God is on our side, and He's bigger. And I think that there's so many people of Christians, and I'm sure that you have been guilty of it, and I've been guilty of it.
Yep.
We see the promised land filled with the enemy, and we focus on enemy, and we see, and that was what they were kind of going into the people that you met in Asia. They were kind of the 10 spies, but what I see is that you came in there with the eyes of Caleb and Joshua, and luckily they listened to you and not the 10 spies, because there was a spirit of the same the 10 spies, the spirit of fear and stuff like that. And anything else?
And I would even say to that about that story in the Bible of he actually called them wicked servants. God actually called them wicked. And you think about that
evil report.
They gave an evil report. And you're right, they didn't say anything that was wrong.
No.
In the sense of what they said was factually correct.
Exactly. And this is a prophetic word. Okay, I'm gonna be mad now, like God's wrath, anger. But this is a warning specifically for Christian journalists. Don't you dare come and be those 10 spies that gives fear, that fills the body with fear, and that actually their word stopped them from entering the promised land. They had to go in the desert for 40 stinking years.
Yeah. And I will say too, you have to just remember the story. They had just experienced miracle after miracle after miracle. They were, I mean, look at the judgments that came on Egypt for them to be delivered. even the crossing of the Red Sea, it brought fear into all the nations, it says. And
Yeah.
then they get to the promised land, the spies go in. And so when we look more at the giants, when we look more at the strength, all the things that are wrong, that are big, that are intimidating, and we put that in a higher position, and as far as who we believe, when God's been showing himself faithful to us, or we have a promise from God, then we're getting into the same problem that they did.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that we are being ignorant, but no, we see it, what it is. But the correct position is, yes, that's true. That's true. But just as God delivered us from
Yeah.
out of the hands of the Egyptians, or just as he helped us to cross the Red Sea, or just as he's helped us overcome in the past in our own lives, or he's been faithful, he's going to be faithful now. And we follow him to where he goes. That's the position we have to take. And, with the instability and the craziness that's going on in the world, like, we have to remember who God actually is, and remember that as we follow him, no matter what anything looks like.
And I think that the prophets are more important now than almost ever before. And the reason for that is there's so much we don't know what's going on in the world. If you listen to the news and like for example, like I talked to a guy yesterday that my wife, she's taking class with him. I met this guy, and he is into natural medicine, and he was like, because he has seen the behind the scenes, like the whole pharmacy was started with Rockefeller, and he wanted to. Before that time, it was natural to like natural medicine and plants and stuff like that was used all over the world, but he institutionalized medicine, and he only made like the man-made medicine as that's medicine, and everything else was not real. And so he had seen that and been red pilled on that. So he realized that a lot of the things that have been told us is a bunch of lies, and there's so many of those things. So who should we believe? And what I realize is that, for example, I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, and there's a guy called Derek Johnson. He has some amazing teaching, because he has done study of all the laws and orders of President Trump, and the law of war manual and laws in the Constitution and everything like that. And he just lays it out there, and it's factual. It's factual, and he interprets the things that is happening in the world now from there. So it's very foundational, and it's really good. But then I've heard a lot of good Christians, for example, being very negative towards Netanyahu, and they come with facts and provable facts, and I'm like, yeah, that could be true, but is it God's perspective? And then I listened to, for example, Robin Bullock, and he prophesied both over Trump and Netanyahu that Netanyahu is my prophet. And if he is that, even though it looks like he is not, what should I listen to? Because I know that the news have proven themselves to be or not accurate in so many ways. So many times, at least for the last 10 years, it has been proven to be wrong so many times. And I know that I can be wrong. So for me, like I'm working at a business, and most of the people I'm working with is not Christian. And I've had some amazing conversations with them. And I said, like, how do you know how to kind of live in this world? What do you know is true and not, the truth and not? And they're like, well, I trust that, and I trust that, but I also seen that what I trusted that was not trustworthy. And so and I totally agree with them. And I said, like, I made a conscious decision that the Bible is the foundation that I want to kind of measure everything up against. That's the foundation. And I believe that new revelations that go against the Bible, you have to throw it out. You have to make a conscious decision. The Bible is the foundation. But on that, like the Bible is a lot of principles, and you don't necessarily know is God not no is Trump, for example, from God, or is he Antichrist, or the Bible doesn't say that. You can kind of take principles and kind of try to figure it out yourself, but I at least I know I'm going to screw that up no matter what. So the Bible doesn't necessarily say anything about what's happening today in Norway, for example. But so that's where I need the prophet. That's where we need the prophetic understanding of what's going on right now. So for me, what I made a conscious decision on is that, okay, if I find a prophet that I've seen has a proven track record, that he has prophesied true over many years, and I feel the anointing of God on him, I want to trust him more than my own eyes sometimes, because my own eyes can conceive me or deceive me. And so I made that kind of, if you have like the Bible is the foundation, and even there, like if you have wrong interpretation of the Bible, it can really get you messed up. But the Bible is the foundation. Then in order to kind of understand what is going on today, we need someone to have a prophetic clear view, like the spies that are sent in the promised land. And that's where I believe like we need the prophets. Yes, we may all hear the voice of God, and God may so for our own lives, I think that's important, and that's true. And we don't necessarily need a prophet in our own lives, but I'm thinking about the national scale, like the word for the body of Christ right now. I'm sorry, I'm going ranting here, but one thing that in Haggai, it says that you've sown a lot but harvested little. Why? Well, you have neglected my main focus now, and that was to rebuild the temple. I believe that there's times when God has a main focus for the body. Like, for example, in Nehemiah, the main focus was to rebuild the wall. Like, if you went out on the field then and started to till your ground and stuff like that, or build your own house, you were outside of God's will, because that was a timing. The timing now is for all of the ecclesia, the whole body, to rebuild the wall. And everyone, your family had that part of the wall, my family had that part of the wall, and stuff like that. And I believe that we are entering a time now where God has a main focus. And if we're doing something other than that, it doesn't matter how great the other things are, but we're going to miss the main focus of God right now. And it says in Haggai, from the day where you when you go back to my main focus, you will see that you will be blessed.
Yes.
So I'm sorry, it was a long rant there, but I think it's super important, the prophet and the prophetic gift, and so that we see the big picture of what God is doing now, because I don't have revelation necessarily on what's happening on national scale. I can have revelation for my life and for my family's life, but we need people that has the revelation on national scale.
And not one person who is a prophet is gonna get it all.
No.
And that's where it's important to be connected and to be in community, even with the prophetic.
Yeah.
It says there's a reason why the prophets got together in groups. That environment is important for prophetic people.
Yeah.
Yes, there are those that are kind of the loners, but they're going to thrive in the company, like that. In the Bible, Old Testament company of prophets. The spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets, and test to see if this thing is the Lord or not. That comes from that community.
Yeah.
And so that's something that we need, is those kind of prophetic communities where we're encouraging this kind of the people to mature into this sort of thing, to be open for God to lead in this way.
Can I ask you, do you see, because I feel like I can see that community in the US. I feel like you have a prophetic community of prophets, proven prophets that come together and they each give their part. Do you see that in Norway?
I see glimmers of it.
Yeah.
I see pockets of it. I see little, kind of like there's a little group here and a little group there that
Yeah.
they're getting really tracking with the Lord on things. But it seems to be quite fragmented generally.
Yeah.
But there is some. There
Mm.
definitely is some. Yeah, that's what at least what I've
Yeah.
noticed. Um,
And so now you give an amazing story about Asia. Do you and you didn't share because in Asia you released that sound there, or did you do that in Asia, or was that somewhere else?
that yes, but it was yeah, but that's a little different thing.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Do you want to share a little bit about that, or is that something?
I think maybe
we'll
not
do-
that direction
no.
right now.
Okay.
But
take it where you wanna. Like,
yeah,
if you have some words, you also have some words for Norway.
Yeah.
I know you
But
have.
one thing I have noticed, and I feel is important, an observation of the timing. I think that we are getting at the threshold of a harvest season.
Oh yes.
I really, that's something I'm really seeing right now, because one of the things that it talks about is the parables of the tares and the wheat, how the enemy would sow tares into the wheat field. And then, but if you know the difference between wheat and tares, tares look just like wheat for most of their life. They look almost identical. A true tare looks like wheat until the only way that you can really tell the difference is when harvest time comes, the heads of the wheat begin to bow, but the tares stay upright. And so Jesus said, he said, no, wait until the harvest, then separate the wheat and the tares. And I really think if you're looking, it's really interesting how we're seeing these dividing lines through the culture.
Yeah.
We're seeing dividing lines, and it's not just in Norway, it's all over the world.
Yeah.
We're seeing this separation going on. And to me, when I'm beginning to see this, I'm like, this to me is a sign that we really are on the doorstep of great harvest. And so, which is also a little bit scary because we need to be ready for the harvest. We need to be ready for this. And God is the Lord of the harvest. Pray to the Lord of the harvest that he would
send out workers.
That he would send out workers. And so that is, I think, something that we need to be praying. Lord, send workers that we can bring in your harvest in the best way. And I don't see it. I see the signs of it starting, not necessarily that it's full blown yet, but.
Well, do you see also a sign in Norway? Because I see the sign in the US. For example.
I see a lot in the US right now. But I see signs of stuff happening here too, but it may not be quite yet.
No.
But in general, I would say that it's just a sign overall of a harvest season.
Yeah. The interesting thing with the harvest season is that the tares are first gathered before the wheat. So there seems to be judgment of the ungodly before the harvesting of the righteous.
Could be. I don't have insight there, but yeah.
But I find that interesting, and I see, no, just continue.
Yeah. So one other thing, just about Norway. We've talked about this. I've talked to some small groups before about this. Was even before having moved here. How the Lord started speaking about Norway, and my wife is Norwegian. But I was had a music career at the time, and we were traveling all over the U.S., Canada, touring a lot, and kind of at the height of this whole experience, I have a series of experiences. It started as a dream, but ended up going into a trance one night. And I would say that there's a lot that I don't understand about all these things still. A lot that it's still a mystery to me on. So even as I share, although I believe it, I there's a lot that I still, I'm like, God, how in the world is this going to work? What are you going to do? I don't understand. And that's okay. I don't have to have all the answers. I just need to, when I believe that he's given something, I share what I believe that he's said. And so in this started as this dream where in the dream, I was flying from the U.S. to Norway with my family. My wife is at the window seat. I had a couple of daughters at the time. They were sitting in between us, and I was at the aisle. And it was a night flight, and I could see some reading lights on around the cabin. And I see Jesus out in the darkness, walking through the sky. It was like I could kind of look through the wall of the plane, through the darkness of the night. Walked almost as an interception through the door of the plane door down the aisle, and he stood over me, and it no longer felt as a dream. It felt incredibly real. I mean, like us sitting here, and his eyes pierced, and just looking at me, not saying a word, but through his eyes, it was like, and I hate to use this word, but it's, it says that Jesus perceived their thoughts, but it's like kind of like the telepathic, reading of the mind. It was sort of like that, having perceived Jesus' thoughts. When I looked at his eyes, I could perceive his thoughts, and I could feel his emotions, and I was overwhelmed by the strength of the emotions that I could feel coming from him and experience them in myself as he looked at me in the eyes. And he was thinking about Norway and how much he loved Norway, and that I could hear and feel that just this deep jealousy, this longing of jealousy, like for the nation, for himself. And he was thinking this thought, and I didn't necessarily have theology for this. I still sometimes don't understand, like, where does everything theologically fit? But I'm just going to speak from what I experienced, okay? And he began to think about the Old Testament story of Joseph. And now, mind you, this felt just as real as we're sitting here. And it was thinking about Norway paralleling the Old Testament story of Joseph. And just as he had raised Joseph up at the center of the earth at that time, for the salvation, not only for the salvation of Egypt, in a sense, like a preserving Egypt and the nations that were around it, but specifically, he says, just as I raised up Joseph for bringing salvation to his father Israel and the house of Israel, I'm raising up Norway in the days that are before my return, of Norway to be like a Joseph, that when the nations turn against Israel and I'm raising up Norway to, just like Joseph opens the storehouse to his father Israel, and it brought hope and saved them. He said, I'm doing the same thing with Norway, and just like I did with Joseph. And of course, I'm thinking, where in the world is this? What is going on with this? This is, and then this intense passion. And I knew, and one thing I forgot to say is, in the beginning of this, I could see that he and the Father had been dreaming a dream, like before the foundations of the earth. Now that sounds crazy to say, but that's just what I understood, as I could feel his dream for Norway and for the Norwegian people, even from, as it says, before you even were, I knew you.
Yeah.
Okay? So in that same sort of precedence, like even before Norway was a nation, long before, the people, like of what they would be, he knew this nation. He knew who this people was meant to be before the time of his return. And in this Joseph calling, and Joseph, yes, he was used as a salvation for the house of Israel and all that. That wasn't the only thing he was. He had an understanding how to steward resources. He had an understanding how to steward resources so that they could be used for when the time of need came. That's really, if you think about it, and the parallel that is now. Now, what I can't assume is what all he meant by Norway. Does he mean Norway by the Church of Norway? Does he mean that as a governmental thing? Is that just his body that he's raising up? I don't have the answer for what that means. You could assume that it's a governmental thing, but I don't know that, but I do know that just like when I was talking to this Asian group of leaders, that the leaders in that nation had the say of what they decided and what they believed. And then the government, because the ecclesia, they had to follow, even though there wasn't some Christians telling them to do it. It was, they had the right authority in the right place, the things had to follow, that ecclesia authority when it was properly and rightfully walked out in accordance to what heaven's heart is.
Yeah.
And so do I, there's a lot of controversy about Israel, and, some are 100% for everything. Some are really against. And I have friends and family on both sides of that. And I understand I understand the perspectives, and I want to be very, very careful that I think that I understand how everything works. I do know, if I'm going to be a believing Bible Christian, I do know that God is very clear about his plan for Israel and how that is involved in his big picture. Like, there are things that he's doing with Israel that are bigger than me, that are bigger than you, that are bigger than any of us. And do I think that everything that goes on in the government of Israel is, I have no clue. Probably not. Probably not at all. Like, why would we think that God's plan is bigger than who's in charge? God's plan is for the fulfillment of certain promises. And how he does that, that's not my job. That's not our job. That, you understand? But it is my job, is to try to understand as best as I can of what his heart and what his will is for all peoples. And to see the hope of God, like in all nations, in all people groups. And so if I'm going to, when I look at the Bible, I see that God's not done with Israel. I can't see that. I know that and that's a whole other theological discussion that I'm not necessarily ready to jump into right now. But just for the sake of, I don't see it that way. I believe that, like, God is doing stuff. And has everything been perfect and everything been right? No, nothing's been done perfectly and right. And probably some things on all sides, there's probably, the enemy's probably trying to pit people against people on all sides and trying to bring hurt and anger, to bring division on every part. But God's family, it's the human race. You look in the beginning when God made Adam and Eve, he wanted a family. And he created this garden. But, love can't be true love unless there's the choice to love. You can't have real love, And so if God's going to give the choice to people individually, he's going to give the choice to nations, of where do they fall in line. And our prayer is that we get on the right side of his heart and the right side of what he's doing. And that should be where we stay humble, that we don't think we understand more than what he's doing, what he's saying. And so, back to this thing of Norway, here's this experience with Jesus. And then he says, and him talking about him and the Father, and we will fight. We will fight. In the sense of not anger fight that I didn't feel, but it was a passion. There is a passion, and there's a jealous love that the Lord has for Norway. For Norway. And it's bigger than any of us. And so I trust him. It says, he who is called you is also able to keep you. And of course, it's talking about the individual, but I believe that, like, he who starts a good work, he's faithful to complete it, and we just have to keep saying yes along the way. Yes, yes, yes. We want to be a part of what you're doing. And so there's a mystery there. There's things I don't understand about it, but what I do know and I do believe, and with that vision, I woke up from this trance. It was like, just away, as I was in it, it felt the same when I woke up from it as it was when I was asleep. And so then the next morning, somehow I was able to go back to bed after that. I was deeply shaken, and I actually was crying because the emotions were so intense.
Yeah.
The passion was so intense. It scared me.
Yeah.
How could it be that God cares so much?
Yeah.
How could it be that God cares so much about this nation? You know, he cares about all the nations. For God so loved the world
Yeah.
that he gave his only son, you know? And before I'd gotten to say anything more that morning, my wife, she says, and she's not a dreamer. She's normally, like, she doesn't remember her dream. She said, I had the craziest dream last night. And I'm, yeah, me too. She said, I dreamed we were on a plane flying from the U.S. to Norway. It was a night flight. We were over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and there were night light reading lights. It was the exact setting. Even the seat number was identical in her dream. And then it stopped. And then she said, and that was all. It was just that. So she didn't have the other part where I did,
No.
where I had Jesus come and interrupt everything for me and scare me, like, you know. If that were just a natural phenomenon, that doesn't happen. And you can't prove that. No, but I'm convicted about it.
Yeah.
I'm convicted of it, that I could have kept that to myself. But when I understood that my wife had the same first part of this dream the same night, then I pay attention. To me, that's part of the witness of it. God's saying, hey, I'm witnessing that this was me. You understand?
Yeah.
I'm not, after that, then I'd hear about other prophetic people that I have no connection to. God told me that Norway's a Joseph. I heard I've heard this a few times now. But this was back when I had this was in the summer of 2000, early summer, maybe late spring of 2011 when this happened to me. And 2 weeks after that, a friend calls me on the phone. And I now, mind you, I was touring musician, touring and singing everywhere, 300 days a year. And so, you know, what do you do with a dream like that when it comes?
Yeah.
A friend calls. I hadn't spoken in about 6 months. And he says, and he worked on Wall Street in New York City at the time. And he said, Clayton, the Lord told me to call you and ask you a question. Okay. What's the question? When are you moving to Norway? Like, what? Number one, like, I'm not planning to move. And he said, well, the Lord told me he's been trying to get your attention, but you're not listening. And I'm thinking, was that him trying to get my attention so that I would move? Like, how did you get moving out of that? You know? Yeah. But what I think it is like God gets our attention and he is inviting us in relationship to seek him on something.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just because, I didn't get that point out of that, probably had I been spending time with him, I would have realized he is calling us to move. You know, he wants us to go. And then I thought, okay, well, I'll pray about it. I don't know how seriously I prayed about it, because then God had sent another friend who about the same amount of time who had not spoken to, calls me on the phone, and he said, Clayton, I had a 5-part dream about Norway and the days that were coming, and how and you were living there, and I'm thinking, this is kind of crazy. So within 1 month, I have this encounter with the Lord. Then I have 2 people call me up with kind of the same message about me moving. Well, you know, it took another year for us to do that. And but I thought, well, maybe way off in the future this will happen. You know, we'll get money from what we're doing in the music career, buy an apartment in Oslo, you know, and have it be that way in my own head is what, you know, how you think.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen that way at all. He kind of had to shake me out of where I was and shut everything down in my life. And then, if for natural reasons, it just made sense for us to do it. And then we remembered the words.
Yeah. So
it wasn't, you know, I didn't come here because all of a sudden I remember, I'm like, oh, yeah, remember what all the stuff that happened. So it was, and then I get here and I live a very normal life. And you think, very normal, very everyday, very common, which is fine. Totally fine. But sometimes you're thinking, why did you have to yell, in a sense, that strong? You know, and you're you wanted us somewhere, And I don't even understand how I even, how I would even fit into any of that stuff anyway, So these things are a mystery. But about that friend's dream, even it was quite revealing in a sense. He said he's in this dream, and he didn't even know where Norway was. Sorry, but he didn't know. He just said, "I just knew you were married to a Norwegian." But that's it. He said he could see that God was bringing foreigners from all around the world, and to stand with Norway in its calling, kind of to see God's purpose fulfilled. And he said he saw them coming from all around. Some were long term, some were short term. And he said he found the culture kind of hard, kind of introverted, kind of cold. And we were excited trying to talk about Jesus, and people were like freaked out, weirded out. Who's this person? And when I heard that, I'm like, yeah, sounds about right.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. Yeah. And he ends up, the dream goes on, and I'm not going to share everything right now about it, but it was where he saw a time of prayer happening in the nation, and especially prophetic prayers were being led by the Lord to pray for the country, and it started softening the nation. And prophetically led, prophetically inspired.
Yeah.
And it was softening things. And in the end part of the stream, I will say this, he finds himself in a hospital with a girl who's a young girl. I don't know how old, but younger. For some reason, she had no family. She had no one who would have been a natural connection point. And I don't know what she was hospitalized for. But he said they just went to go love her and just spend time with her. They weren't preaching to her. They weren't doing anything, but they just were loving her. And she suddenly gets healed. And he said, we didn't pray for her. We weren't preaching. She got healed. And he said, I understood. The Lord said, basically it was like a spark in dry ground, and people started getting healed everywhere. A move of God started. And it was not through this. He said, and he heard the Lord say, the way to win Norway is love. If you love them, you'll win them.
Yeah.
And it is, and I think that that's really true.
Yeah.
We don't need more, pushing stuff down somebody's throat, and I mean this respectfully, in a religious sense, like of, this is how it is. This we have to be. We have to preach. No, we need to love people. We need to love people, and what is it, Francis of Assisi, that thing, preach the gospel, and then if necessary use words. Of course, words are necessary, and there's a time to say something. And I'm not undermining or saying there's not a time to say something, but if our actions aren't in love, it doesn't matter what you say to people. If you don't actually care and you don't actually love people, what does the Bible say? You're a banging cymbal, a noisy gong. It means nothing.
Yeah.
It means nothing. And I think that we need to have, number one, love in our heart. When we meet people, when we talk to people, not a striving to have to say something. No, we want to see who these people are. We want to love them. We want to meet them. And then if the opportunity opens to start sharing these things out of love, it's a different kind of thing. It brings a different kind of fruit. And we have to be okay. Like if we, like in the dream, don't even open mouth to say anything, but we just saw somebody in need and we loved them and we met them. And God moved on that to do something, to spark something. And I'm not saying we don't say things. I'm not saying that.
No.
I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is, like, if we care more about saying something and arguing and to be proven right and all that, and then shut your mouth. Shut your mouth.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that. Oh.
Yeah. Well, like we all have a place to grow.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about, look how Jesus treated people, and who were the people that Jesus got after, and who were the people that Jesus the people who were supposed to be the religious leaders, the people that were supposed to know what was right. And here he has compassion for the broken, the needy. that to me is the position of God's heart for if we actually want to make a difference. And most people, most people that I know, that talk about themselves being atheists or they don't believe in, Christianity, that most of them, and I've heard other people talk, most of them, the real problem they don't really have a problem with God.
No.
They have a problem with God's people.
Yeah.
And they're hurt, and so for this thing of trying to take a stance for, and of course, hurt people. And so you end up having this kind of crazy cycle when you're the way to respond it is not going to be more of the same. It's like, no. Let's ask, maybe we did do something wrong. Maybe Christians did do something that was wrong towards some people. Well, let's ask for forgiveness. Let's humble ourselves. Maybe we didn't do everything the right way. Well, let's take ownership in an area where we have ownership to be taken, and we're human. We make mistakes, for goodness sakes. Like, we're not all going to do it perfect. And let's have a little bit of humility about it. Like, I'm going to mess up. I have messed up, and I'm probably going to mess up again. And I might even hurt you by accident. And I hope that you'll say something to me, if I hurt you. And I hope then that if I might get a little offended, oh, I meant well with that. Well, you know what? I'm sorry that I did that to you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I really am sorry. That's the way that we need to be representing Christ. This is, Norway has been a Christian nation, and it doesn't look like that so much anymore in a lot of ways. Like, the values aren't there, but God loves this country. And so I feel so strongly like we need to get to the place where we ask God, would he let us see people the way that he sees them. Here's this, if you think about it, that story of the woman who was going to be stoned because she was caught in adultery, and the religious leader, and he said, "You who don't have sin, you cast the first stone." And then the older ones, probably the wiser ones that knew that they had plenty of stuff, they realized, like, okay, hold on, I'm not going to do this. We have to put down our stones.
Yeah.
We got to put down our stones. Yes, there's a time to stand up for things that are right. I'm not saying that. And we have convictions about things we care about. There's natural dividing lines on things like abortion or whatever, and we can get really vocal or what. I'm just saying there's things. If we aren't doing what we do in love, so I know I've been talking a lot now, but
it's really good.
Yeah,
I just feel. Can we pray for Norway? Because, what you were saying is that because you earlier said you feel like it's harvest time.
I feel like it's harvest time,
but in order to get the harvest, like the little girl in the hospital, it needs to be happening in love, because you've had revivals in the past, and there has been certain things. I'm sure that love has been an important part of every revival, because God is love, and so there has been the Pentecostal renewal. It was speaking in tongues and manifestations. You had different kinds of revival that had different focuses. But when you were sharing, what I felt like the next revival is going to be a revival of love.
Yeah,
that's going to be the thing that's going to.
I don't know if you grew up like this. I've had people I've known that have grown up in really strict families, and then I've had other ones that it felt like the parents gave them a lot of liberty and a lot, but I've noticed something of the kids that seem to be the ones that, it doesn't mean that they can't get away with anything. And I'm not saying that, of course you're going to discipline your kids if in the right way, in a healthy way, because you care about them. You don't want them to keep doing crap. But have you ever been around those kind of motherly, fatherly people that just, it's like they celebrate who you are. They see it even if you don't quite see it yourself.
Yes.
And they treat you not the immature self that you were at one time,
No.
but it's like they see the potential of who you are, and they treat you like that. That to me is seeing with the eyes of faith and the eyes of love.
Yes.
Even if somebody isn't to that place yet, even if they're not there, maybe they don't get there, but you still, with the same respect, with the same, and those are the kind of older people I felt so excited to be around, that I wanted to be around. It was because they saw something in me. They saw something in, and they kind of drew out those good things, those talented things. Those are that's the kind of way we need to love the next generation.
Yeah. Amen.
We need to, instead of all, you hear about the older people though. When I was young, like we didn't do stuff like this, I think every generation as they get older, they talk like that.
I heard this saying, like, I said, oh, the youth of today, they're lazy, they're disrespectful to the parents and everything, and then okay, who said this? Plato, 1500 before Christ or something like that. It was like, so it's something that's been going on forever.
Something has been going on forever, and I think that isn't going to stop going on either.
No.
And so I just think we have to be less like those that are of that mindset as we get older and we're looking at young people. No, we got to stop. We got to stop that.
Amen.
We got to stop talking like that. We need to see with the eyes of heaven, the eyes of the Father. There are no accidents for who's here on earth. I believe that everyone has a purpose. I believe that everyone has a place in God's heart, and God has a plan for everybody. If we want to be a part of that plan, there's a specific blueprint, a specific design, a specific. Nobody's fingerprints are the same. Nobody looks. Other than identical twins, even fingerprints are different. And
I heard a story here. I think it was Elijah's stream that I heard it. It spoke so strongly to me. It was like this woman, and God had told her that she should write a book. And so she started to say that about herself. Well, I am a writer. And then God told her, like, I want you to say that you're an author. Well, author is someone that's already published something. And she hadn't published anything. And she was like kind of arguing with God. Well, I'm not an author. I haven't published anything. And then he said to her, in heaven, you are an author. Even if you never write that book, you're an author because I created that. I created you to be that. For example, an apple tree. If the tree dies before it has produced any apple, it's still an apple tree. And if we start treating each other like, what's the verse? It's like, we judge each other according to the Spirit. It's like God sees you from how He created you. And that is how I actually should treat you. Not where you're at today, but actually of how because God sees you. If you're first an author, God sees you an author and He calls forth those things that are not as though they were.
And in maturity, I think that's maturity treats people like that.
Yeah.
Immaturity treats the opposite.
Yeah.
If you're a small child, if I hit you, then you hit me back. Like we're judging each other on the way that we're treated. But if I'm the adult, I'm looking like you may be immature right now, but I see who you're going to grow up to become. Like I'm not boxing you into a person that's going to be hitting for the rest of your life. And like I see who you're meant to grow up into maturity. The eyes of maturity see beyond the temporal, the momentary, bad behavior, or any of this. They see what's bigger and beyond that. The greatness that God's called for and put in each person. That's what true prophecy really is.
Yes.
It's seeing with the eyes of the Father and calling things that are not yet as if they are.
Yeah.
And that's the way that God's kingdom works.
Yeah, can we just pray?
Yeah.
And there's going to come some prophecies over Norway right now. So in Jesus' name, I thank you that you love Norway. I thank you that you gave your Son to save Norway, Lord. I thank you for that. I thank you for people that are gone before us. Like Christianity, like it's 1,000 years since Christianity came to Norway. And we've had people like Hans Nielsen Hauge that changed the nation. We had TB Barrat that brought the Pentecostal revival here and to Sweden. Lord, help the Christian leaders here in Norway to see Norway as you see it. And help us all Christians to see. I pray specific for the next generation, the generation coming up now, the generation that are young right now, Lord. Lord, I speak life into them. Where sin abounds, grace abounds even more. Lord, I thank you for that. Thank you that you've chosen this generation coming up to be radically used by you, but they are longing for love. And Lord, I pray that you will pour out your love, your agape love on this generation. I pray for that in Jesus' name. Pour out your love and help us to representatives. Help us to be your feet and hands for your love to this generation and for our country.
Yeah, Father, thank you that you who began a good work, that you are the one that is faithful to complete it. I just pray for all of those that find this podcast in the future. Lord, that you would touch their life, no matter what nation they're from.
Yes, Lord.
You would touch their life, Lord. You've called them for your purpose, for your glory, for your love. Yeah, I just pray that you would make clear how they fit into the things you have for them, Lord. Where there's mystery, where there's things that aren't clear, that you would make it clear. Lord, I pray that everything that happens, everything that they're led in, would really be out of this love and out of this foundation of love. We want to just ask, God, that you would finish the things that you started in us. All of our lives have a story of where you've somehow intervened, or somehow you saved us, or we could have died in an accident here or there, but we're still here. I just pray, Lord, that you would bring clarity to us of what you have for us in the now, and how we prepare and how we position ourselves for the things that are coming next. In Jesus' name.
Yeah. Amen. Oh, that was awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That was powerful about the love revival that's coming. I think that was the main point today.
Yeah.
It was we had to, like, me and my wife, we have been trying to read the Bible together, and like for months we read 2 chapters, and it was 1 Corinthians 13 and it was Ephesians 5, like about the marriage. And like it is so easy to be excited about something else and kind of lose the foundation of 1 Corinthians 13. Okay, if I have all knowledge but do not have love.
Yes.
If I have all faith, I can move mountain but do not have love.
Yeah.
If I give my body to be burned, or give all I have for the poor and do not have love, it's like it's worth nothing.
It's worth nothing.
And that is...
It's humbling.
It's humbling. So, well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.